Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chief Science Officers Zoom In on Science Calls, where we learn about STEM professionals and their careers to understand the impact of their job in modern life. My name is CSO Vritik from Nairobi, Kenya. I am personally excited to host today's call. So, for all of us to enjoy this experience, please mute your microphones and post your questions at any time during the presentation in the chat box. Today, we welcome Randy Klabaka, a museum professional that studies complex questions in biology using reptile systems, especially entomology. Randy, can you tell our participants a little bit about yourself and your work?
I would love to. Thank you, Vertic. It's great to be here with all of you. Isn't it amazing that we can communicate like this on totally different sides of the world and in totally different hemispheres? So I'm happy to be able to share some of my research with you. Just like Vertic said, I'm Randy Klabaka. I am a herpetologist, but I also love entomology. So I consider myself an amateur entomologist. But what's interesting is you'll see as I talk, the things that I do in herpetology also apply to entomology or any other biological system that you might be interested in. So if you like fish, that's called ichthyology. We also have museum professionals who study fish in our same museum. Same with plants, that's called botany. So everything I talk about today is applicable to all life on Earth, essentially. I am from the United States, and I did my initial coursework as an undergraduate at BYU, and that is a university in Utah. It's right at the base of the mountains, kind of near the Rocky Mountains. It gets really snowy. It's very beautiful. It was a great place to be. And then I did my, I'm now doing my PhD at Auburn University, which is in Alabama on the other side of the United States. It's very green, and a lot of, so an entomologist would enjoy it here in Alabama. So that's a little bit about me as far as where I come from. I work in the Auburn University Museum of Natural History. So some of you, or maybe most of you, have to a museum. And what you might think of when you think of a museum is like Night at the Museum, or a movie with pillars, and you go into this building and you look at exhibits. But most museums, that isn't the main part of the museum, what you see. The real magic happens behind the door that the public don't have access to. And it's back there that I'm going to introduce you to what I do back there. But first, the work I do is I go from here in Alabama to the desert of the United States, where I go back to the mountains, basically. And I catch and collect animals for research. For example, this snake shown in this photo. And these specifically for research projects that I then take back to the museum, and we use them to study things like physiology, or like how their bodies work. We also study their evolution. We study their body chemistry. We study conservation. How can we protect these populations from going extinct? Them are endangered. So what I'm showing these photos, in this top photo, these are the lizards that I work with, and they're in jars here in the museum. Behind closed doors in these museums, in every museum basically in the world, or in all the research museums, you have collections where researchers are constantly doing different types of studies. So all these jars you see here in this, these are lizards that I've collected for research, and I'll tell you a little bit about my research. But then also our museum has a live animal collection. So down here, there's a group of students going on and I am showing them a lizard from my study that was kept alive in a study we were doing. I wish I could show you all these lizards. They're really cool animals. I do have some things that I'll show live animals today if anybody's interested. So what do I do with these? What's the purpose of collecting them? Well, we then analyze, for my project, we analyze the lizard laboratory. So you see me in a lab coat. Normally I'm this just in normal clothes, ready to go out and catch things. But every now and again, I have to do lab work. I'm in a lab coat, and what we do is we take tissue samples from the lizard's body, and we can extract their DNA. So this obviously isn't a real picture of DNA. I have two that are much smaller than this. They're about, and in these little tubes, we are able to extract the animal's DNA, and we can also extract their mitochondria. So mitochondria, if you've taken a biology class, you may have heard that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. It's like a place in the cell where all the energy used by an animal is created. So here is kind of a cartoons of my lizards, and this is kind of a weird figure, so I'll try to explain it. Each one of these pictures of a lizard is a different species of lizard, and these are all of the species that I focus on for my research. Inside of these little colored circles, that's the number of lizards I collected for a recent project. And here on the left side, this weird looking line, those are the relationships of the lizards. So that's an evolutionary tree. If you've ever seen a family tree, like with you and your parents and your grandparents, it's the same thing. What's really weird about these lizards, and I don't know if anybody's heard of this before, I'm betting that none of you have ever heard of this before. The different species will reproduce with one another. So they'll mate across species, and the babies from that reproductive bout are new species. So this would be, this would be like cat and a dog reproducing and creating like a cat dog thing. And the really thing about this, yeah, I'm seeing some of your faces right now. The weird thing about what happens here is this new species that is created is asexual. So what does that mean? That means they are all female. There are no males. And all of the babies that this species here has are female. And you might ask, like, how do they have babies if there's no males? Well, that's one of the big questions. But they basically just lay eggs that are little clones of themselves, exact copies of themselves, which is totally weird because, like, in our lives as humans, like, I have half of my mom's DNA and half of my dad's DNA. But these asexual lizards, their offspring, their babies are 100% of their DNA. So the babies have 100% of their mom's DNA. So there's a lot of questions to address there, and basically what I do. So one, I'll let you know about one interesting thing that we have found that the asexual species run slower than the sexual species, which is a little weird. So they decide to look into the mitochondria because the mitochondria provides energy. And usually if something runs better than something else, it's probably getting more energy. So in the most recent study that we've done, what we've looked at. So this is just a kind of complex plot, but you can see that if you just look at these graphs down here, the asexual lizards, this is mitochondrial function. Their mitochondrial function is lower than the sexual lizards. So that's what we haven't published that yet, but that's what we're working on now. So I know that was a lot to take in. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Before I do that, though, I'll tell you a little bit more just about me as a human normal person rather than scientist. So I grew up with, I have two brothers. These are all of us when we were, well, I was probably your age. What grade are y'all, Verdict?
I'm in grade 9.
Ninth grade. Okay. You're a little bit, well, let me think. No, I was about ninth grade. I looked really young. I was a little kid. But then these are my two brothers. I actually grew up in Las Vegas. You've probably heard of Las Vegas. It's the crazy place with all the casinos. So yeah, it was kind of interesting growing up there. I'm now married. This is my wife. This is us visiting a place in Guatemala. And this is our daughter. Her name is Lily. And she likes catching snakes and lizards with me. So here we are holding the snake. She's putting it in this net. That's me and my life. So I'd be happy for any questions that anybody has.
Thank you very much for telling us about your work. It is evident you are truly passionate about entomology and herpetology. While we were learning about what you do, participants have left questions in the chat, but let's start with a question I had prepared. Who was your mentor as a child?
As a child, that's a good question. I think my biggest mentor was probably, well, I had a couple. Definitely my dad. My dad really got me excited about, not a scientist, he owns a pizza restaurant, but he liked us out into the desert. Las Vegas is a desert, and we would look for fossils and look for lizards, and that was a big spark for me. And he's always told me to follow my dreams. So when I was your age, I wanted to be a medical doctor. But then as I got older, I realized I didn't really want to be a medical doctor. And he was always very supportive of me, just wanting what I enjoyed doing. So he was one of my main mentors. I also had teachers. So I remember a teacher in well, let's think, ninth grade. I had actually a big mentor. It was my cross country coach. I ran cross country in high school, and he just was very, very good at helping me learn life principles, like don't quit and do your best always, and don't worry about the outcome as long as you do your best. Those were probably two of my biggest mentors, my dad and my cross country coach.
Okay, second question. What advice would you give to your 14-year-old self?
14? Yeah, so that photo, I was 14 in that photo. So yeah, what would I give that kid? What advice would I give that? Probably be nice to your brother. Yeah, that would probably be some of the main advice I would give. Other than that, really try to do as many new things as possible, so that you can find things you love, which I was kind of good at, but I mostly just played sports. So I really liked playing sports. I wish I would have gotten more involved in, like, entomology. I wish I would have gotten more interested in bugs. I wish I've gotten more interested in, like, gardening and doing gardens or sewing. That would probably be the main advice I would give myself. Try to do new things constantly. Get out of your comfort zone that you didn't think maybe you would enjoy. You'd be surprised by what you end up liking.
Awesome. The first one, you say that be nice to your brother. If you're a big brother, you know how to bully a small brother. Like, it's so fun bullying them. Like,
Yeah.
right.
The sad thing is, though. Oh, you're a big brother? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big brother too. Both my brothers are younger than me. They're both about probably like 15 cents taller than me now. So now they bully me.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Now let's start with the participants' question. All right, the first question is from CSO Mo from Kuwait, and he asks, how do we keep tabs on all the new species if there is such a huge reproduction pool?
That's a good question. So first, it's really hard in general to know how many species there are on Earth. And we don't know how many species there are. So the lab I work in, I didn't talk about this part of my research, but we are actively trying to discover new species and describe those. So I have some lab mates who work Southeast Asia, over there. I also have some friends who do things in Africa, but I don't know if I have anybody that does or know any research in Eastern Africa. I know some people who do research in Western Africa, but they're constantly trying to, they basically just go out and look for animals in places where not a lot of research has been done, to see if they can find anything new. And they're constant, especially with reptiles and amphibians, they're making discoveries every year. There's hundreds of new reptiles that are described. Now, with respect to what, who was it that asked this? Mo? With respect to what you asked with the reproduction pool, are you asking, where is Mo? Oh, okay, I see you. Are you asking with like respect to these species that hybridize and then create a new species? Like, how do we keep up with how many different species there are? Yeah, that's a really good question. We aren't, first off. There's a lot, just like I said with the other things, there's a lot we don't know about. But secondly, a lot of people would argue that they're not actually species. And as you take more biology classes, you'll realize that something as simple as species, which seems like, okay, we all know that species exist, actually does get debated. What is considered a species and what isn't? These two lizards cross and then they create this new hybrid. Is that really a species, or is it just a hybrid of two different species? So I guess to answer your question, we're not totally keeping up with them. We're trying to by just, finding them in the field. But secondly, there is an argument whether or not they are considered as unique species. Did that answer your question at all?
Yes, thank you.
That's an excellent answer. So our next question is from Miss Kelly, the CS International. What favorite lizards you have captured?
Oh, that's a good question too. Well, I'll take that opportunity. Can I show you some of the things I caught recently?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
So I was doing yard work today, just out trees in my yard, and I saw a few things. And it wasn't until I came back in the house, I said, I should have caught, I could have showed all of the students. I went back outside and caught some. So this is a very common lizard here in the southeastern United States. It's called a green anole. So this is a really cool lizard because they have the males. This is a female. I saw a male earlier, but when I went back out to try to look for it, I couldn't see it. But the males have the big pink neck that they inflate. I don't know if you've ever seen animals that do that. Inflate their pink neck to try to impress the females. The females don't have that. They just have white neck. But yeah, so that's what this is. These are one of the lizards. They're very common. You can see them all over here. But I do like them. They have really pretty blue eyes. It's hard to see. But so that's one. And she's actually pregnant. So she's got, you can see how she's kind of brown. She's got eggs in there. So I'll put her backside. Oh, she's got a little bit of red on that neck. That's called a dewlap. A little bit. So I do really like them. They're cool lizards. Now something else I caught is, I put it in here. This is my daughter's little bug cage. This is the garter snake. And I'm really excited about this because I've never caught a garter in Alabama. So this was just in our garden. And as soon as I caught it, it was really scared. And it bit me. It latched onto my hand. But it's so small that its mouth, it's not venomous. So first off, it doesn't do any damage. Its mouth is so small that it couldn't really bite my hand at all. But it's really a little snake. Now, when I caught this, I know every snake in Alabama, and I knew that this was not venomous, so I knew I was safe catching. You do need to be careful that when you see a snake, you need to make sure that if you're going to try to handle it, I just peed on. You need to make sure that if you're going to handle it, that you know if it's venomous or not, and you need to make sure that you know that very well, especially in a place like Kenya, where there are, or wherever you are, Kuwait, Kenya, or if you're anywhere else, you do want to be careful. But most snakes are harmless. Here in Alabama, it's a little bit different, where we only have like 4 venomous snakes, and everything else is harmless. But they get a bad reputation. So a lot of people here, if they see a snake, they kill it because they're scared of it. But they're actually very good components of our ecosystems. So this little guy here eats a lot of the bugs in my yard, and in turn, he's food for a bird. So rather than just killing them, we should try to understand them and live with them. So I'm really excited about this. This is one of my favorite things that I've actually caught in Alabama. So I'm glad that I can show you. I'll show you one more thing.
I just wanted to ask all the CSOs, if you'll turn off your video, I don't know if it's coming in glitchy for you, but if while he's talking, if you turn off your video so we can see the close-ups.
Okay. Is it a little glitchy for some of you?
Just, yeah, I think it's just because it's probably better now, so go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to see the snake again, or you good for me to move on?
It was pretty cool, but we want to see what else you have.
Okay. So here in Kenya, you have way cooler snakes than we have here. We have some cool snakes, but you get some really awesome things there. But we do have some things here that you don't have over there. Alabama and the southeastern United States has some of the richest salamander diversity in the world. So this here is a spotted salamander. It's a chubby little guy. And I have been taking care of him for a little while. You'll notice the bright yellow spots. This is called a spotted salamander. Those bright yellow spots are because this is a toxic salamander. It has poison. So at the back of the tail over here, it has some toxic glands. So I wouldn't want to eat him. Holding him is safe, but I wouldn't want to eat him. And this might look a lot like a lizard. It has 4 legs, it has a tail, but it's actually not. We, as humans, are more closely related to a lizard than this is. This is actually very closely related to a frog. It's an amphibian. So it doesn't have scales, it breathes through its skin, and it lays eggs in the water. So this is one of my favorite creatures. And I have another salamander I'll show you real quick. So this one's not as chunky. I'm taking a risk in touching this one, not because it's dangerous, but because it's called a slimy salamander. And it's called that because it secretes slime that is super sticky. So after this, I'm probably going to get my keyboard all sticky. But this is a really cool salamander because it has no lungs. So it only breathes through its skin. But same thing, it lays eggs in the water. It's more closely related to a frog than it is to a lizard. And this one's really cool also because it has a projectile tongue, kind of like a frog. So if I had a bug right here, it would be able to get that bug with its tongue. So yeah, slimy salamander. Has a really long tail.
That is so cool. Chibeni wishes that he could breathe through his skin. That's funny.
Yeah. I do have a few more things, but I don't want to take up all the time. I'll show one more thing. Well, okay, I gotta show this. This guy's really cool. This is another chunky salamander. And these are all, I've just caught them here, just driving, 10 minutes down from my house. This one's called a marbled salamander because it kind of looks like a marbled rock. And the cool thing about this salamander is it also is a little bit toxic. It's very closely related to that spotted yellow salamander. But this one doesn't lay its eggs in the water. What it does is it lays its eggs somewhere where it knows it's going to rain and flood. And then once the rain comes and the area fills up with water, then the eggs hatch. And so salamanders, their babies are kind of like baby frogs. They're larvae. They don't look like this. They have gills. They live in the water, and then they eventually leave the water when they're ready to reproduce as adults. So that's kind of a little taste of what some of the reptiles and amphibians are here in Alabama. The last thing I did find today, so this again was while I was working in the yard. This is a snake skin. So this doesn't even have the head. But I found this in my backyard. So this snake was probably about 6 feet long. And I found it under my tree. I think it's living in my tree. And I'm pretty confident I personally know this snake. I've caught a huge snake in my backyard. And similarly, I know what species it is. It's a rat snake. It's not venomous, so I knew I could handle it. And this snake has bit me like 10 times. And this is a big one, so it does draw blood. But because it's not venomous, it's less dangerous than like playing with a kitten or a cat. So this snake has bit me multiple times, and still I've gotten scratched by my cat, and that was way worse than getting bit by the snake, even though it's huge. So a lot of times we're so scared of snakes that we think, if we see a big snake, it's evil. But A, they're not as dangerous as some of the things that we're really close to. And B, they usually don't want to bite you. They usually just want to get away from you. The only reason this thing bit me is because I grabbed it and it turned around and was like, leave me alone. Yeah, they're not out to get us. They just want to be in peace. This one wants to live in the tree behind my house, just in peace. Doesn't want anything to do with me. So one of the reasons I wanted to show you all these things was to explain that, the world is not just ours. We're surrounded by all of these other organisms, and it's their world as well. So in my backyard, I have these other organisms, and I need to learn how to exist with them rather than trying to eliminate them, because they do offer. This world is just as much theirs as it is mine. Anyway, that's that's that. I just wanted to show you a lot of the critters that live around here because I thought maybe you'd enjoy that.
Yeah,
So
we did enjoy that, and it's really fun to see that animals moving because, of course, we cannot have that experience like live, and it was really great. And now the next question is from CSO Rudra from Kenya, and he asks, "Do the asexual lizards produce if they are all female?"
they do reproduce, but they don't reproduce sexually. So they don't have if you've taken biology, there's this process called meiosis where you have the female has an egg and the male has a sperm, and the sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell, and that's what creates the new organism. Instead of that happening, the female just has an egg, and the egg just ends up duplicating its DNA so that it has enough DNA, and by itself it becomes an adult without any males.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's new. Like, okay, next question is from CSO Gauri. After how many days do you release the species, and also do you provide food and water when you capture them?
I did. Okay, sorry. I also see one other question, and I just don't want to forget about it. But it was sent to me privately. Is it okay if I read that one out loud?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, and then I'll come back and answer that one. So this is also from CSO Gowrie. He or she said, "Have you ever captured a green-blooded skink?" And I wanted to answer this. So first, no, I never have. But I know the lab that discovered that green blood. So they're at Louisiana, and I just recently visited them. So for all of those of you, probably most of you, who are like, what are they talking? There is a species of lizard, and there's probably multiple, but this skink lives in, I think, in Papua New Guinea, so kind of over by Australia, and it has green blood. And weirdly, it has green blood, and that green blood helps it be immune to malaria. So we don't really know much about it other than that. I would love to catch one day, but I haven't yet. So okay, I'll jump down to the other question that CSO Gowrie asked. How many days do you release the species, and also do you provide food and water when you capture them? Oh, and then you asked it again. Sorry. Okay. So yes, we do provide them with food and water. This is the part of the question and answer session that's always hard for me. With my study animals, or are you talking about these organisms that I just caught here that I'm showing you?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, I do provide them with food and water. Except for the ones that I just caught today, because I'm just going to let them go outside right now. So they're just hanging out with me for like an hour. They'll be okay. But the salamanders, I feed them, they eat worms. So I just go in my backyard and flip over a rock and grab 10 worms and throw it in a cage, and they're happy. Now for my research, well, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that was awesome. And the next question is from CSO Dhanusha from Kenya. What's going to be your next step? Like, what plans do you have after this?
That's a good question, Dhanusha. I ask myself that every day. So I'm working on my PhD, and as a PhD student, the next logical step is eventually I want to be a professor. So I would like to be at a university where I'm able to do research. But there's one step, usually in the United States, before you can actually become a professor. You have to do one more little step of research. And that's, I'll get my PhD, and then I'll go work at another lab as a postdoc. It's a postdoctoral associate. And then I would like to be a research professor working at a university.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like having Mr. Randy as our professor would be really awesome.
That's really
Next
nice of you.
question. Yeah, like it will be really fun to have you. Like seriously.
Thanks.
Okay. Next question is from CSO Rudra Patel from Kenya. Do you discover new species in water? If you do, then is it true that only 5% of the Earth's water surface discovered?
That's a good question. I personally haven't done much with water, but I am fascinated by it. So, you know, I was telling Verchik that I'm also interested in entomology, but also ichthyology, fish. Uh, Similarly, we do have people at the museum who are finding new species of fish. And we do have a lab that works in the Congo. They go down to, they work in the Congo finding new minnows, but also here in the United States and in South America. I don't know positively if only 5% of the Earth's water surface is discovered, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a true fact, just because there's so much water on Earth that yeah, there's probably a high lot humans haven't seen every inch of water. I will say the reason I do think fish are so fascinating and water or organisms in general. When we usually think of animals, we think of mammals like cats and different types of antelope and deer. And maybe reptiles like snakes and lizards and birds, but of all vertebrates, over half of all vertebrate species are fish. So there's way more fish than all mammals, lizards, snakes, birds, salamanders, frogs, all of those things combined. There's more fish. So if you do like discovering, or you think you'd be interested in discovering species, fish would be a good one to go for, because there's a lot out there that we don't know exists.
Awesome. That's a fact. Next question is from CSO Mo. How can we protect amphibians from extinction?
That is a really good question. Right now, there is what's known as a mass extinction, where what that term means is tons of species are going extinct. And we think that a lot of that is caused by humans. This mass extinction has really affected amphibians, so frogs and salamanders, and another group called caecilians. What can we do to help with that? There are small things that we can try to do every day, and that is try to conserve energy. So try to be wise with the way we use energy. I don't know how all of you live your lives, but here in the United States, we drive everywhere. People use cars for everything. If they're like driving down the street, if they need to get down the street, they drive. So trying to cut back on that uses less fossil fuels, and so that helps amphibians. So if you can walk somewhere or ride your bike, you should walk somewhere or ride your bike. Another big thing, and I think actually the biggest thing, this is my opinion, I don't have sources to back it up, but I think one of the leading causes of the mass extinction right now is because of habitat loss. So in some of the major regions of the world where most species exist, there are tons of trees and habitat that is being destroyed for our use. So whether that be to plant farms or to take the trees to use for, you know, wood or other resources. And taking away the habitat has a very, very negative impact on all species. So it's really hard to know what exactly we can do. Like, what can you do to help with that? But I personally think that one of the best things you can do is educate yourself on what is going on in your immediate surroundings, in your community, and in your country, and what you can do to help with that. As you are all youth right now, if you're able to learn those things while you're young, once you become young adults and adults, you will be the people who are leading society. So you can help make decisions on habitat loss and energy use that can help these species not go extinct. Even just in the last 50 years, there's been huge losses in species diversity. So if we start to act now on educating ourselves and making better decisions, then as we become leaders in society, we'll be able to help out. But as far as making decisions every day, just try to, you know, turn off the lights when you're not in a room. Try to take a shorter shower. Don't try to, you know, use as much water. Try to use less gas, things like that. Air conditioning.
So the last question is from CSO Gauri from Kenya. I'm so inquisitive, but do you also rescue injured snakes too? If so, which species? And the second question is also, have you ever captured a lizard that's reproduced by pathogenesis in your lab?
Okay, first question, have I ever captured an injured snake? Yes. Here in my town in Auburn, Alabama, there are a lot of people, like I said, who don't like snakes. And so they call the police when they find a snake in their yard. And the police has the phone numbers for people in my lab. And so they'll call us. So I've gone to a couple of places where the snake has been like trapped somewhere and we've had to get it out of a fence. And actually in one instance, there was a snake that got trapped in a fence and dogs had been biting it. So we got there and ran the dogs away and got the snake out of the fence, and I think it did okay. That was a rat snake. That was this same species. So this is just the skin, but it was that same species. Your second question was, have I ever caught a lizard that reproduces by parthenogenesis? So that's an awesome word. I'm guessing you've heard about it before. For everybody else, when I showed that slide that had the asexually reproducing lizards, another term for asexual reproduction is parthenogenesis. And that comes from Greek. Partheno means virgin and genesis means birth. So the lizards are like virgins because they, you know, are all female. There's no males for them to reproduce with. They are born, the individuals are born of basically virgin birth. So yeah, I've caught a lot of them. Here in the United States, I've caught probably 12 species of parthenogenetic lizards. It's always really cool when you find them. They look beautiful, but also just to think about, wow, you're a clone of your mama. It's pretty wild.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your participation today. Before we close this call, we have one final question. What advice would you give to us as young leaders for the future?
My first advice would be keep doing whatever you're doing to be in this situation, because to be all united right now in this group on this conference call, listening to me means that you're doing a lot to try to learn. So whatever you've done to be involved with this group and you're to further your education, keep doing that. You seem like a really great group of kids. And secondly, I guess the advice would be the same that I would give 14-year-old me. Try to do as many new things as you can, and go out of your comfort zone. So whether that be, learning more about lizards and snakes, or whether it be learning more about cooking, or learning about physics or chemistry or math, try to really, every class that you take, try to have an open mind and see it as something new and interesting. Even when the students around you are like, joking and saying how boring whatever it is they're studying is, try to take it seriously and ask yourself if you really enjoy that subject, and you'll be surprised. And be nice to your brother. Yes, that one's probably number one. And maybe I'll make that more philosophical, but everybody's your brother and everybody's your sister. So be nice to everybody, but especially your little brothers.
Again, we thank you for joining us today, Randy. It was fun learning about entomology, and you are an inspiration to many of us. And we really look forward to having you on another call as we continue the Zoom In on Science program. CSOs, to close the call, please unmute yourself and join me in saying our motto. CSOs, don't just hope it happens, make it happen. Thank you so much for joining us today, Randy. We really appreciate your presence this session. You truly are an endearing person. And I really don't want to say goodbye, but anyway, we'll see you next time.
Definitely the highlights of the animals. That was the best call so far. Thank you so much for continuing to be part of our network.
Of course, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anytime.
And Bertik, there was no reason to be nervous. You did a great job.
You did awesome, Bertik. Good job.